Elena Voss had always believed her ambition would carry her beyond the ordinary. She was 28, brilliant and stubborn in ways that drove even her mentors to exhaustion. That was precisely how she'd found herself alone on the Martian surface, cut off from the expedition team, a mile from the outpost dome, with her oxygen reserve dwindling in its transparent canister like an hourglass promising death. For 3 hours, she'd walked the ruddy plain, her suit beacon emitting a looping emergency ping no one seemed able to answer. At first, she clung to protocol stay calm, conserve air, follow the path etched in her visor overlay. But Mars had other plans. The storm had come from nowhere, a sheet of ochre dust swirling into pillars like the columns of an ancient temple. In its wake, she'd realized the impossible. The path she'd followed simply ended, erased by wind or something stranger. When she stumbled across the fissure, she nearly screamed. A clean slice in the red rock, almost surgical, as though Mars itself had opened a wound. It was 10 feet wide, running hundreds of feet in a sinuous curve across the valley floor, exhaling a vapor that refracted her helmet lights in flickering rainbow motes. She couldn't see the bottom, only darkness and the suggestion of movement within. Elena backed away, only to feel the unmistakable sensation of being watched. The air pressure dipped around her, like an unseen presence pressed closer. Something in the rift was waiting. She swallowed, voice scratchy in her helmet. "Control, this is Voss. I found a..." But the feed was dead, static. Even the telemetry signal had been devoured. She knew she should turn away, that every survival instinct demanded she keep searching for the outpost beacon. But something drew her forward, a compulsion so profound she felt it had its own gravity. She inched closer, peering into the rift. Then she saw it. What do you think Elena saw there? Write in the comments. Far below, luminescent shapes drifted in the darkness petals, almost spiraling upward in silent choreography. Each petal gleamed with opalescent fire. As they rose, they formed a figure, a towering silhouette, humanoid only in the loosest sense, limbs trailing filamentous strands that moved as though weaving the dust around them into the shape of a body. 1,000 glittering motes glimmered along its surface, like stars embedded in flesh. She gasped. Her breath came too fast. The figure seemed to sense it, for its head lifted. Where a face should have been, there was only a plane of swirling lights, shifting into a suggestion of features eyes, mouth, though they dissolved the moment she tried to focus. A sound rose around her, bypassing her helmet's insulation, a resonance that thrummed in her bones. It wasn't words at first, but sensation, curiosity, recognition, a sort of ancient yearning. She stumbled back, but an invisible pressure held her. The voice came, then impossibly clear. "You are here," it said. Its tone was like chords played on instruments no human had invented. "You are the one." Elena's heartbeat pounded so violently she thought it would crack her ribs. "The one?" she whispered. A pause. The being's luminous strands wove tighter, outlining broad shoulders, a torso, arms that reached toward her without touching. "The one who will join," it replied. She understood somehow. Not in language, but in the dread certainty that crept up her spine. This entity, this impossible, beautiful creature had chosen her for something she could neither fathom nor refuse. Her oxygen gauge blinked red. Warnings flared in her HUD. But she could not move. The being's presence pressed into her mind, an enveloping warmth and an unspoken promise. Unity, communion, marriage. She knew if she remained one moment longer, she would never leave. Her gloved hand shot to the emergency override switch on her helmet. She slapped it, breaking the lock, yanking free the connection to her oxygen tank. Air hissed away, and with it, the paralysis lifted. She staggered backward, clutching her throat, vision swimming. The being recoiled not in anger, but surprise. A ripple of colors played across its form, violet, indigo, green, as though it were tasting her desperation. She turned and ran. Before we continue, write in the comments what you would do in Elena's place. Her boots struck the Martian soil in ragged strides, each step a prayer that her lungs would not collapse before she reached the ridge. The storm had thinned, revealing the skeletal horizon and the pinpoint glint of the outpost dome in the far distance, a speck of salvation. She ran without looking back, though she felt its gaze following her, as tangible as heat on her skin. Halfway across the valley, her comm flickered back to life in a wash of static and a garbled voice. Voss read location. She gasped into the mic. "This is Voss. Her words dissolved into coughs. "I'm alive, sending coordinates." She risked a glance behind her. The rift was gone. In its place lay an unbroken expanse of rock, as though the fissure and the being had never existed. Only the rainbow motes drifting in the thin air proved her sanity. She kept running. Elena reached the first ridge and collapsed behind an outcrop of jagged basalt. She She clawed at the release tabs of her helmet, desperate for more air. The interior pressure had equalized to the thin Martian atmosphere, barely a breathable trace of oxygen, but she welcomed the raw cold against her face. Each inhalation tasted of rust and ozone, but she forced her lungs to draw it in. Her vision pulsed with dark splotches. She squinted down the slope, her helmet lamp now a weak flicker. Beyond the next valley, the outpost's dome glimmered, a low crystalline hemisphere lit from within by the soft glow of life support arrays. 1,000 meters away, it might as well have been 1,000 kilometers. She forced herself to stand. Her legs threatened to buckle. In the thin air, every movement became an ordeal. Her suit's readouts warned of hypoxia, but she ignored them, one boot after the other, each step a refusal to surrender. Voss! Her comm crackled again, a female voice she finally recognized as Dr. Persa, the mission's science lead. Elena, we have your signal. Stay where you are. We're dispatching the rover. No! Elena gasped, her lips cracking in the dry wind. No! Keep moving. Too close. Too close to what? Elena looked over her shoulder. There was nothing. Only the endless plain and a faint luminescence seeping from invisible seams in the rocks. A shimmer, like heat distortion. She turned and kept walking. Minutes passed, an eternity measured in ragged breaths and the dull hammer of her pulse in her ears. She barely noticed the changing slope beneath her boots, the terrain smoothing to a shelf of reddish glass where ancient lava flows had cooled. It was there, in the reflection of her lamp on the vitrified stone, that she saw movement behind her. At first she thought it was a mirage, a pale suggestion of a figure, but when she turned it was no illusion. The being emerged from nothing, a ripple in the air, unfolding in silence. Its arms hung by its sides, each limb fracturing into 1,000 shimmering filaments that floated independently in the breeze. Its faceless head tilted in an attitude that reminded her of longing. You cannot flee, it said, though its mouth did not move. Its voice resonated in her skull, bypassing her ears. It is destiny. Stay away, she choked. I don't want this. The entity moved closer. She felt its warmth, a radiation that penetrated her suit and touched her skin like the light of a distant sun. Join, it whispered. In that instant, a second vision slammed into her mind images she could not unsee. Herself standing at the edge of the rift, hands extended. The being enfolding her in a tapestry of living light, their forms merging into a single silhouette that pulsed with impossible color. In the vision, she felt not fear but a serenity so vast it threatened to dissolve everything she was. She fell to her knees, pressing her palms over her eyes to drive it away. When she looked again, the figure was gone. Or had it ever been here? Her radio crackled. Elena, do you see the rover? Lights should be visible. She scanned the plane. There, near the dome, a moving beam of white, slicing across the darkness. I see it, she gasped. I see, I'm coming. Stay where you are, Persa insisted. You're in no condition. But she had already started walking again. She would not remain here in this haunted place. The final stretch was the worst. Each meter devoured what little oxygen her failing tanks could deliver. She stumbled, fell, rose again. Her mind flickered in and out of lucidity. Once, she thought she glimpsed the being pacing her in the darkness, a companion she could neither banish nor accept. Finally, headlights washed over her. The rover, a six-wheeled transport, skidded to a halt. Two suited figures rushed forward, luminous medical badges flashing on their chests. Hands gripped her shoulders, and her vision narrowed to a tunnel of red and white. A voice amplified inside her helmet. Elena, stay awake. Your hypoxic pulse is shallow administering oxygen. A hiss. Cool air flooded her lungs. She tasted salt and metal, her eyes fluttered open. Beyond the medics, at the edge of the headlamp's reach, she saw the being watching, unmoving, waiting. Then darkness claimed her. When Elena woke, she was weightless. A pale glow suffused the air, and for an instant she thought she had died, ascended to some sterile afterlife built by engineers instead of gods. But when she turned her head, pain bloomed at the base of her skull, hot and undeniable. She was alive, trapped in the medical bay of Outpost Acheron. The ceiling's panels cycled from pink to blue, mimicking a sunrise that would never touch this barren world. A filtration hum droned in the walls. Her suit lay discarded on a rolling rack, dark smears along the back where she had collapsed. She tried to sit up but found her arms strapped to the bed by padded restraints. A surge of panic coursed through her. Easy, came Dr. Persa's voice. The woman stepped into view, her face ashen, brown hair in a tight bun that trembled with each shake of her head. She held a tablet against her chest as though it might shield her from Elena's confusion. We had to restrain you. You, Elena, you fought us. You screamed. We couldn't let you hurt yourself. I'm fine now, Elena croaked, though her throat felt scraped raw. Please, take them off. Persa hesitated, glancing toward the observation window where another figure stood. Commander Hale, his arms folded over his chest, his expression carved from stone. Elena, he said, voice muffled through the intercom, we need to know what happened out there. I told you, she said, her pulse quickening. There was something in the canyon. She stopped, realizing that to say it aloud would be to admit the impossible. A being, she finished weaker. It spoke to me. Persa's expression softened, her eyes glistening. Elena, you were hypoxic. Hallucinations aren't unusual in... It was real, she shouted, fighting the restraints. The soft pads bit into her skin. I saw it. It tried to... To what? Hale pressed. Attack you? Injure you? No, she whispered, the memory flooding back in crystalline detail. It wanted me to join it, to marry it. The silence in the room was total. Persa looked away. Hale rubbed his forehead. Listen to yourself, he said quietly. You were alone, nearly out of air, disoriented. Check the logs, Elena rasped. Telemetry, the environmental readings. There was a rift. It opened in the valley. It wasn't a hallucination. Hale's eyes flicked to Persa. She swallowed and raised her tablet, tapping a few commands. A hollow projection flickered to life, an overhead map of the area where she'd gone missing. The topography was unbroken. No fissure, no disturbance of the regolith. Nothing, Hale said. We ran a drone sweep, no anomalies. That's impossible, Elena whispered. It was there. Persa touched her arm gently. You've been under extreme stress. Let us help you. Elena closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, she saw the being's face again, a shifting plane of light that was neither cruel nor compassionate, simply inevitable. I need to leave, she murmured. I can't stay here. Hale sighed. You'll remain in observation until you're cleared by psych evaluation. No. She felt her strength returning, anger fusing with terror. You don't understand, it's still out there. It's waiting. Neither of them answered. That night, sleep came only in short, feverish intervals. Each time she closed her eyes, she dreamed she was standing at the fissure's edge, the entity rising in a tide of radiance. Sometimes it wore a semblance of a human face, its luminous features arranging themselves into something almost familiar. A face she had seen in old photographs, her father's features melded with her own. In the dream, it extended a hand, and she felt herself lifting her own to meet it. Each time she woke, gasping, her wrists straining against the restraints. In the early hours, when the station lights dimmed to simulate midnight, the dreams changed. She found herself no longer at the canyon, but within a cavern. The walls glowed with soft bioluminescence, shedding color that had no analog on Earth. The being waited there, seated upon a throne of coiling filaments, as though the cavern were a cathedral built for its kind alone. You resist, it said in the dream. Why? Because, she whispered, her voice echoing among unseen stalactites. I don't want to disappear. You will not vanish, the being murmured. You will become. Its filaments reached toward her, brushing her face in a caress that felt too tender to be benign. She recoiled, her foot slipping on the slick floor, and she fell backward into nothingness. She awoke screaming, the restraint strained against her panic. A nurse rushed into the medbay calling for sedation. No, Elena begged, tears streaking her cheeks. Please don't make me sleep again. The hypo hissed against her neck and the world dissolved into darkness. When Elena woke, her restraints were gone. For a moment she thought she'd dreamed them, but no, the raw bruises on her wrists were real. She lay in a narrow cot inside Quarantine Module B, a smaller windowless chamber. Her head throbbed with the echo of chemical sedation. Overhead, the intercom crackled. Dr. Voss, Hale's voice rasped, weary and resigned. I'm told you've stabilized. We've scheduled a psych eval with Dr. Senko in the next rotation. Until then, you'll remain in isolation. She pushed herself upright. The walls were sterile, painted a colorless off-white. A single observation lens glittered above the door. She swallowed hard. Commander, she rasped. It wasn't a hallucination. Silence, then a sigh. Elena, get some rest. The channel cut off. She pressed her palms over her face, fighting a tide of helpless rage. How could they believe she'd invented something so precise, so terrible? Every moment she spent locked in this antiseptic tomb brought her closer to the nightmare in the canyon. She knew, somehow, that if she stayed, the being would come for her again. It had promised. She rose unsteadily, testing her strength. She was weak, but no longer helpless. In her chest, a certainty burned. She would not remain here to be drugged into compliance. When the station lights dimmed to their nocturnal cycle, she paced to the access panel beside the door. She'd helped design this module back at Langley. She knew the maintenance override. All it took was a narrow strip of foil and a sliver of conductive filament from the bunk's heating array. Her hands worked by memory, heart hammering in her throat. A minute later, she heard the satisfying click as the lock disengaged. She waited, listening. No footsteps, no alarms. She cracked the door and slipped into the corridor. Outpost Acheron was silent as a crypt. Only the hush of air circulation and the distant hum of reactor coils betrayed any life at all. She crept past the med bay, past the laboratory, her socked feet soundless on the composite decking. The exit hatch loomed ahead, sealed with an iris of titanium petals. For a moment she hesitated. Beyond that door lay the frigid vacuum of Mars's midnight. To go out was madness, but to remain was a slower kind of surrender. She palmed the access plate and the system chimed a low warning. Locked. Authorization required. Her breath caught. Of course, Hale had revoked her clearance. She closed her eyes. Images surfaced unbidden. The being's hand reaching for her. The promise of union. A shudder rippled through her. She couldn't stay. Her gaze drifted to the emergency egress panel. In a catastrophe, any occupant could trigger a depressurization bypass. It was a last resort, a failsafe no one was ever meant to use. She pressed her palm to the panel. A synthetic voice spoke overhead. Warning, emergency egress will vent atmosphere, confirm. She swallowed, her mouth dry as ash. Confirm, she whispered. The hatch cycled open. A violent exhalation tore through the corridor, tugging at her hair, her clothes. The air pressure plummeted in an instant. She clutched the frame, teeth bared in pain as her lungs compressed. Then she stumbled out onto the red sand. Above her, the sky was a black ocean, freckled with a million cold suns. Mars's horizon glowed faintly with auroral haze green and purple banners rippling over the pole. In that alien beauty, she felt her fear momentarily recede. She turned north, toward the canyon that was no longer marked on any map, and began to walk. The trek was slow. Without a suit, she had only the emergency rebreather clipped to her belt, a device never intended for hours of use. Each step stole more strength than she could afford, but something pulled her on, an inexorable compulsion that mingled horror and longing. When she reached the valley's edge, her knees gave out. She fell to the sand, clutching her chest. The rebreather's indicators blinked an angry red, oxygen nearly depleted. Below, the fissure had returned. It gaped in the rock like a wound reopened. Vapor coiled upward in languid streamers, and within, rising from the darkness, was the being. This time it did not speak. It only lifted its faceless head and extended its arms in silent invitation. Her heart faltered. In that moment, she understood the truth. She could not escape it. Whether she accepted or fled, it would follow. It had marked her, claimed her as surely as any territorial creature. The rebreather shrieked a final warning and fell silent. Airless, she tumbled forward, rolling down the slope in a clumsy sprawl. As darkness closed around her, the last thing she saw was the being kneeling to meet her descent, filaments outstretched. Consciousness returned in slow waves. She felt warmth before she felt thought, a golden radiance suffusing her limbs, coursing along every nerve like liquid dawn. When she opened her eyes, she expected to see the medbay ceiling. Instead, she found herself within the fissure. It was not darkness that awaited her. It was a cathedral of living light. The walls were smooth, carved in graceful arcs that defied her understanding of geology. Veins of bioluminescence pulsed beneath translucent stone, bathing her in a glow that seemed to emanate from nowhere. The air was warm and sweet, though she knew no atmosphere existed here. She tried to move and found she could. Her limbs obeyed, her breath came easily. It was as though the fissure itself supplied what her body required. Before her, the being waited. It knelt on the floor or hovered, she could not tell. Its body was no longer the abstract tangle of filaments she had first seen. It had shaped itself into something more familiar, more comforting. Broad shoulders, long arms, a face crafted from shifting motes of light. A simulacrum of humanity filtered through some ancient intelligence. And within that face, she saw her own features mingled with another's. A hybrid impossibly beautiful and terrible. "You have come," it said. Its voice resonated in the very stone. "I am, pleased." Her voice emerged as a whisper. "Where are we?" "Between," it replied. "This place is. Not fully your Mars, nor fully my domain. A threshold." She pressed her hand to her chest, half expecting it to pass through her body. But she was solid, alive. "What do you want from me?" Its head tilted. "Union." She felt tears prick her eyes. "Why me?" "You are compatible," it said. "Your form, your mind can bridge." "Bridge what?" It was silent a moment. When it spoke again, its voice was softer. "Loneliness," it whispered. Her breath caught. In that single word, she heard a weight that transcended her comprehension centuries, perhaps millennia of solitude. A yearning so vast it had become the very fabric of this place. "You want me to become you," she said. "Not to end," it said gently, "to transcend." "I can't," she rasped. "I don't want to disappear." It raised a hand, palm upward. A sphere of light blossomed in its grasp, images swirling within visions of Earth, cities under blue sky, children running beneath trees, memories she had cherished and forgotten. They hovered between them, fragile and beautiful. "You will not lose these," it promised. "They will become ours." A sob tore from her throat. "Please, let me go." Its head bowed. The sphere faded, leaving only the soft radiance of its presence. When it lifted its gaze again, she saw no malice, only sorrow. "If you flee," it said, "you will perish." "Then I'll die," she whispered, "but I will die as myself." For a long moment it did not move. Then it reached out, not to seize her, but to brush the tears from her cheek with one luminous fingertip. "I grieve," it said. The light dimmed, the warmth receded, and the fissure began to dissolve around her. She felt herself falling, though she could not say where. The walls became air, then dust, then nothing at all. Cold flooded her senses, biting her skin. She struck the valley floor, hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Pain erupted in her side. She gasped, tasting blood. Around her, the fissure had sealed, leaving only an unbroken expanse of rock. Above, the dawn had come. The thin light of Sol crept over the horizon, limning the outpost dome in pale gold. She tried to rise and found her limbs weak, but her body unbroken. Somewhere, she thought, she heard a whisper. Farewell. She staggered to her feet. Each step was agony, but she kept moving. Toward the dome, toward her life. She knew she would never be free of it. Its voice would echo in her dreams until her last breath, but she had chosen. When the outpost's airlock cycled open, she collapsed into the arms of her crewmates. Their shouts were distant, their hands ghostly on her skin. But in that moment, she felt herself anchored in a way she had never known, alive, unjoined, herself. Days later, when the mission logs were reviewed, no trace of the fissure remained. The telemetry recorded nothing but blank terrain and the feeble readings of her failing rebreather. The others suggested trauma, delusion, a breakdown beneath Martian isolation. But Elena knew the truth. In the quiet hours of the night, she still felt its warmth, lingering like the memory of a lost lover's touch. Sometimes, when the wind hissed over the habitat dome, she thought she heard its voice. "You will not be alone." And she would close her eyes and remind herself that she had escaped. Barely. If you enjoyed this story, you might like to subscribe for more.